Billy, welcome to the show. Really excited. I've been a fan for probably about 30 years now, so I'm really excited to have you on.
Dude, thank you for having the time, your valuable time to give me to promote my new, I won't curse. I can't curse, right?
You can. Go for it.
Promote my new fucking record that I'm so fucking psyched about. It's been 2 years locked up in a studio and at home during COVID, and I'm finally getting it out. It just hit the stores on Friday. It's called Leaders and Liars. So thank you for your time, bro.
Of course. Yeah, we were just listening to it, and honestly, it's really good. I would not say that if I didn't mean it. It's like really good, and it kind of reminds me of like it's like something from 1986 in a good way with like better production. Like it almost reminds me of like the Sick It All 7-inch or something.
That's dude, I love you. Your shows are so awesome. You have this. You should have a tag, no filter, because you're super honest and straightforward. I don't get that, but that's cool. I'm a big fan of Sick of It All. I think this record is a little bit, for me, it's a little bit more metal and heavier. Closer.
It is a little bit more, yeah. Maybe like the first album where everyone said they were too metal.
I never said they were too metal, but
but lots of people did.
Did they?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you guys got that more than anyone.
Yeah, we did. I always looked at us like we were kind of like, I don't know if it's bad to say these days, but like the redheaded stepchild, like we liked punk rock, metal, and hip hop, and we mixed it all together in a world where it wasn't cool. You couldn't do that. And suddenly everybody who liked those types of music were like, dude, I like Biohazard, and I like Onyx, and I like, Public Enemy and Beastie Boys and Slayer and Sick of It All. So it was okay to suddenly like different types of music.
And that seems obvious now, but back then it was not. But I do want to talk about the new album before I don't want to go talk about the old days forever, because I want to make sure we talk about the new album. You said you've been working on this for 2 years. You got a lot of other stuff going on. What inspired you to make another album? This is your second solo album, right?
It's my second solo record under Billy Bio. I kind of look at it like I was always a solo guy, even though with Biohazard, but I would always bring in finished songs, recorded, like Tales from the Hard Side or Punishment, songs that were actually on demo. Even on a re-release of Urban Discipline we released recently, there's a version of a song I wrote called Business that's like a demo. It's a drum machine. It sounds like old school early hip hop with a drum beat, from a drum machine. But we would put it through with Biohazard. We would put it through something we call the meat grinder, when everybody got a chance to put their 2 cents in. With the solo stuff, I feel like, it's like this, Vin. It's like you have a painting. You have this vision in your head. You paint, you put it on canvas, you hang it on the wall. You don't invite your friends over, give them a beer and a paintbrush with some paint and say, go ahead and change whatever you want, So that, for me, it's almost like it's a pure representation of what and who I am, what I have inside. And that vision, I like being able to paint, hang on the wall and see what was in my head purely captivated or captured and authentically representing what my feelings are. Not to be all deep and philosophical, but that's, as an artist, that's what it is. That's what we like to do. And we put ourselves out there. But I don't look at it like, to go back to your initial question, it's not like I don't stop and say, okay, time to make a record. I've never been like that. I'm a creative where I'm always writing. I'm always working on new ideas, and there's always soup on my stove. And it's sometimes this soup is a little bit more ready than another soup or another dish. Sometimes it needs a little bit more salt or just needs to simmer a little bit longer. But there comes a point where whatever I'm working on, these songs kind of gravitate together, and it jumps off the table and says, yo, we're ready. Call your friends over because we're ready to eat. And there was a point, and I love that in every different chapter of my creative life, where those songs magnetize and jump off the table. And at one point they all said, we're called Leaders and fucking Liars. And we're called Leaders and Liars.
It's all right. We can swear here. It's the internet. We're good.
Oh, that's right. Everything's cool on the internet.
Yeah.
But my point is, it's like so it wasn't like I was just working on these songs for 2 years, but I'm always writing and recording. And during the pandemic, we came home from tour. I was on tour with with Agnostic Front, Gorilla Biscuits, H2O, Wisdom in Chains. It was the last tour that I think the underground music scene did. It was amazing, awesome time. We came home. I had an EP that I was going to release, and I said, yeah, I'm just going to work on, continue working on these songs. And that ended up, those songs, like I said, gravitated together and became Leaders and Liars.
Right. And on the one hand, it's cool to kind of have full creative control and not have to make any compromises. On the other hand, it's also cool to get input from other people who are good musicians and can add something. Is there any of that you miss, or at this point, are you like, nah, I'm fucking good, I don't need anyone else?
And not to sound like a pig-headed egomaniac, but it's not like I don't need anybody else. It's that I think I became prolific enough in capturing what my ideas are and taking them from the inside and put them out on the canvas, so to speak, quote unquote. That I don't like diluting it. That's a better way of looking at it.
Right. So I really like the drumming on this album. How like detailed do you program everything and just say play this? Or I know you've worked with that drummer quite a bit. How do you approach that?
So it's pretty cool. I have a Patreon, Billy Biohazard. That's a lot of my patrons. It's like family, obviously, but they watch this Leaders and Liars take form. And I shared a version of a song that I ended up doing with Toby from H2O. The song is called One Life to Live, but I documented, like, I would put the phone down and be sitting in my living room playing acoustic guitar. And it basically, the song kind of unfolds over these like 6 episodes that I release on Patreon, but it's pretty interesting how it shows how I kind of like to work. Even though there's not a formula, sometimes I go in and however the idea is born, I end up in the studio, and sometimes I sit behind the drum kit and play the drums, and then I record it, and then I tweak it a little bit, edit it, because I'm not even a good drummer, but I know what
good enough to sketch out the idea.
Yeah. And on that song, sometimes I sit there with a drum machine and I play like finger drums. So I did that with that song, which was pretty cool, but it doesn't matter where the seed or how the seed is planted and how it's cultivated. I always bring in my guys later. Once I have the vision, it's not even a sketch, it's actually a finished version. But then we sit down and I show it to Fred, who's my brother. We play together in Power Flow also. And Fred and I show him the songs. I very protective. Like I don't email anybody copies of songs. I bring the guys in, we jam the idea out, and they give me the respect of they know I know what I want, and they let me they can help me keep that initial vision intact.
Right. Well, I thought it was really interesting how hardcore the album sounds, just because, you've been doing this for a long time, and most people, you expect someone who's been making this kind of music for so long, or this is my singer-songwriter album, and, that's cool, bust out the acoustic guitar, and this is like, wow, this is like maybe the most like straightforward hardcore thing you've ever done since like the first Biohazard album, maybe. That was really interesting to me, and it's fucking good.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. Like, you can't do music these days for money. I never started this, and I remember Evan's parents said to us, you guys, you're gonna make some money from this because you're playing the wrong music. And we're like, no, it's not about making money. And it's always been not even an afterthought. I never paid attention to the business. I still don't. I probably would have been financially more successful, but it's never been about that. To me, like, I believe focus on your art, work on your craft, express yourself how you want to express yourself. Everything will fall in place if it needs to. If not, at least you're true to your art. And that's always been my focus. The hearing things like that people get what I do, really hits home. I don't create anything for anyone else but myself. And I think having that focus enables me to, I don't know, maybe hit a nerve with people. It's worked the way I do it, for so many years. And I'm no regrets, no apologies. I love what I do. And I'm always humbled and to hear things like that. So I like it. It means more to me than, having a gold record on my wall and shit like that.
But you do. I would say State of the World is probably the best selling hardcore album of all time. If you want to call it hardcore, some people would, some people wouldn't.
Yeah, I love that record. It is a proud moment. We sold a lot of records for a record label.
Like, well, yeah,
that's the business. That's the business side. And looking in retrospect now, back on my music career, it's always like where the record companies are kind of like a vessel for us to get our creativity out to the world. The motivation for them is selling, I guess. And I understand the business, and I kind of use that for my, for a way for me to get my art out there.
Right. Well, I wanted to ask about a couple songs in particular, just because it was just cool to hear the sound. Like Generation Kill was maybe my favorite one. It kind of reminded me of like Carnivore.
Awesome. That's great. Here's the thing about art, and this is the beautiful thing. It doesn't matter what medium it is. When you look at a Picasso painting or a Monet or whatever, even the Crew Eyebrows, my buddy from New York who did the artwork for the record. When I stand and look at his artwork, for example, he didn't stand next to me telling me what he meant by the artwork. So the interpretation is never wrong. It's always right. I do agree. Hardcore punk rock and metal has always been a big influence of mine, but I started studying piano and playing piano at 6 years old. My mother helped me. My uncle and my grandfather were giant influences of me in music. And my father's record collection, from Emerson, Lake and Palmer to Yes, Led Zeppelin, and the Rolling Stones. Then I fell in love with punk rock. So all these great influences that were installed in me probably when I was younger, they all come out in different ways in my music. So sometimes I think some people will hear, oh, this is like Blackout. I get a lot of people, it's the opening track. It's the last single I did before the record came out. It's the first track of the record called Blackout. A lot of people are like, oh, it reminds me a lot of like Biohazard feeling. Cool, because I was 1/4 of Biohazard, and that influence is obviously there. So there's something about the record Leaders and Liars that gives it's something there for everybody. I think obviously if you're a country fan, you're not gonna like my music.
Probably not.
If probably not, definitely not. Although I like Johnny Cash.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you don't like Johnny Cash, there's definitely something wrong with you. Another song that I thought was interesting was Leaders and Liars, which almost has a little bit of that like street punk oi kind of feel to it. Which is normally a sound that like I don't really like. But you just have we were listening to Punishment earlier, and I thought, I'm not surprised that Biohazard was the band that kind of rose above all the rest of them, because the songwriting is just so much fucking better. And hearing you talk about your kind of influences with, everything from like piano to ELP and stuff, it seems like you have a much broader palette that you're drawing from than probably most people who just listen to other hardcore bands.
Yeah, I'm never one to sit outside and cast stones at other people, because some of
that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, some of my closest peers. I mean, one of my favorite records was Victim in Pain. I remember hearing that first opening chord from Agnostic Front on their first record, and it was out of tune. And then I became friends with those dudes, and being on tour with them, having Vinny Stigma, he's tuning his guitar between songs. He turns to me, and the guitar's a little bit out of tune. And I wanted to say, no, it's not there. It's not in tune yet. And he interrupted me and said, close enough for hardcore. And I was like, yes, hardcore and punk rock ethic, different from metal, but metal still had that same attitude. It was like, it's not about perfection. It's about attitude first.
Energy,
vibe.
Yeah.
And Leaders and Liars has that, not just on the title track. Generation Kill, it's a song that's a fast, fierce fucking song about something that's fast and furiously destroying our culture. I think disliking or unliking somebody because they think different from you, or believe in something different to you is very destructive to our culture and our world.
Which is, I mean, I'm sure it's always been there to some extent, but I mean, I remember years ago, I knew people from, you'd go hang out with vegans and Krishnas and metalheads and people who had like wildly different belief systems, and it was fine. And now it's like, oh, if you don't agree with all the 10 things I believe, then I hate you. You're the enemy.
Yeah. And I'm not, I think that's way more destructive. I fell in love with the subculture in a time when I really needed to feel like I belonged, because I felt like I didn't belong. And that's, I think, what draws us all to the underground music scene. And you can call it whatever. It can be the punk scene, hardcore scene, New York hardcore scene, or the metal scene, or whatever. But it's that feeling of family that we fall in love with. And what unites us is having that same belief, like, hey, you like this, but I like this, but we also like this. And that makes this, that's unifying on similar beliefs and respecting differences. But our culture has changed so much, and I'm not with that. I think that it hurts more than helps. And there's things that I believe and I will die and fight for. But I also don't want to live in a world where everybody believes what I believe in, or let's say for music. I love Metallica and I love Anthrax. And I also love Cro-Mags and Agnostic Front and Turnstile. But if everybody in the world liked those bands, there wouldn't be anything else.
Right.
I want to get turned on to the next I want to get turned on to the next new thing. And that is what turns the world in a beautiful, awesome, positive way. When you disrespect that, or actually when you don't have respect for being, holding a different belief than somebody else, or having respect for them having a different belief than you, that's not positive, not forward thinking.
No, it sure isn't. And it's like, it's more than just making life unpleasant. It's actually like a serious risk to society, because this is when people like fight, people are ready to kill each other over the most trivial shit, that they probably never even sat down and talked to someone that they disagree with to figure out why,
Yeah.
Like, for example, like my dad was a corrections officer. And so I hear all these people, and my stepmom was too. So, I encounter lots of these ACAB people who go on and on about how, and lots of my friends are cops, and, go on about how bad cops are and rah, rah, rah. I'm like, all right, well, my family was in corrections. Have you ever, like, do you know anybody do you know any cops? You ever talk to one? Did you ever even try?
Exactly, dude. It's like racism. I remember, we grew up fighting, not to pull this card, but I
actually fighting Nazis for real.
For real. Going down, I remember when we played this one show, and these kids, and it was like it was Biohazard, Sick of It All, and Share Terror in Allentown, Pennsylvania. There was like maybe 1,200, 1,500 kids. I don't remember, but it was
Allentown was like that was like Hammerskins.
I don't know who they were, but when you see, even though out of 1,500 people, if you see a group of 10 kids like doing Sieg Heil, putting their arms like Hitler, I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is insane to see. So we said something. They tried to beat up one of our friends, Chris from DC. He got back on stage, and we made an announcement. We said, yo, keep your fucking bullshit politics out of here. This is all about being family and believing in similar things, and keep the politics, keep the bullshit out of here. These kids didn't want to hear that. I jumped off the stage, between the stage and the barricade, and all these 8 dudes ran right to me, and they were putting their fists out, like their hands, doing Sieg Heil. I don't know if this is, it's video. Yeah. So they're doing this, and one kid put his fingers right in front of my mouth, and bro, he had black. I'll never forget this. He had black leather driving gloves, and I bit his hand like a fucking pit bull, and I'm shaking like, I spit his hand out like, come on, motherfucker. And they wanted to kill me, but I stood my ground. I was like, fuck you, man. Half of Biohazard is Jewish. You're going to fucking do that shit. You're going to deal with fucking consequences. I don't believe, and I also believe this. Here's the other thing. I also believe it's your right to believe in what you want to believe. That's what makes our country as unique and special. In a lot of places, you can't air your views. Right. And I believe that if you're against the government, it's your right to say you're against the government. It's your right to say it online if you're against the government. I've been doing it my whole life in my music. Don't censor people. I'm not for neo-Nazis coming to my backyard and doing that crap. And I will stand up against them because it's not what I believe in. And I'm not going to say it's also their right to believe in that shit, but you get my point. You know?
There are certain things that are not acceptable, and you also have to give people a chance to change. Like maybe they thought something stupid when they were 16. Maybe they got, I know someone who was involved with, when he was like 13, he was involved with like a skinhead gang and stuff. He's like 40 now, and it's been a long time. So he didn't even really believe it then, but there's people who still hold it over his head. They're like, oh, when you were 13, you hung out with these guys. Like, yeah, 27 years ago. Yeah. But they want to hold it over your head and refuse to give people a chance to change or correct their mistakes.
Bro, we early days of Biohazard, I was addicted to heroin and did crystal meth. I became straight and was a straight edge kid, and kicked all that shit. I was more interested in music, but we all have ups and downs in life, and it's how you deal with those obstacles that put you on a better path or a more destructive path. And it's one or two ways you're going to go. So what you mentioned before about knowing cops and having police in your family, it's the same concept. I remember having this conversation with this kid, and it was a different show, a different tour, different part of our career. But the kid said something stupid or did something. I can't remember. We ended up in the backstage talking to this kid, and he was telling us how he had a problem. He didn't have a problem. I remember there was a fight with one of our friends, and he said, "Hey, I want to apologize. I don't dislike your friend because he's black. We have no problem with black. And he said, and pardon my, but to relay the story properly, he said, it's not the blacks, it's the Jews that we don't like. I'm like, what do you mean we? And what do you mean, Jewish people? You have problems with Jewish people now? First you had a problem with my friend because he's black. Now you have a problem with Jewish people. Evan stands up, and who's Jewish from Biohazard, and he comes over and he's like, what'd you say? I said, he's telling me how he doesn't have problems with my boy who's black. He has a problem with Jewish people. And Evan goes, I'm Jewish. What's your problem? He goes, oh, no. It's not all Jewish people. It's just the Jewish people who own banks. So the point was, and this kid, after talking to this kid, he came down and stripped it down very minimally. And he said, listen, reality is I don't know any black people. I don't know any Jewish people. I grew up in whatever town we were in. It was like Ohio or something. He said, my father, my grandfather, they grew up hating so many people.
They just told me this stuff.
Yeah. And it's all I know. And I was like, bingo, that's what it is. So what I love about the new generation and every generation, I love the aspect of each generation that goes out and tries to make change. My daughter, when BLM was blowing up, making a lot of noise, my daughter said to me, hey, Pop, I saw that you shared this post or that post. Awesome. Good for you. I said, you know what I stand for. You know what I believe in. I said, I'm always up for the people who want to make the world a better place than when they left it or than when they came here.
Yeah.
So my daughter, the one specific thing she, and I know I talk about shit, bro. I don't give a fuck. You're going to cancel me. But when BLM was anti-police and started talking about defunding the police,
right?
As much respect I have for people standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves and trying to make a change for the better, I didn't agree with that. My daughter pushed me and said, you got to post about this. I'm like, you know what? I'm not for defunding the police. We own a home, we pay taxes. I invest in the community. I like to make the world a better place. And she's busting my balls. And I said, hold off a second. Let me tell you something. I said, you know what? I've done more to change the world for a better place than all your friends' parents put together. She goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, besides, you know what I stand for. You know what I've done with my music. You know what I write about. That aside, I raised you. And she looked at me. She's like, what do you mean you raised me? I said, you're your own person. You believe in what you believe in, and you're trying to make the world a better place. I said, in essence, in all due respect, it's like I kind of cloned myself, not in my beliefs, but I made another human that is fighting for what she thinks is right. And even if I disagree with you, I love the fact that you stand up and fight for what you believe in. Every generation has that faction to it. And I love that. There's a song called One Life to Live. And I put my daughter and all her friends in this video.
We were just watching it.
Yeah, it's one camera shoot. It's super creative and different for me. And I got the idea from Goodfellas where just one continuous shot.
Right.
And it worked. But it's that YOLO vibe. Like in the younger generation, Generation Z is what they call it now. But you and I, when we were coming up, we were part of that generation where we said, fuck that. Times Square Park lit on fire because the cops were just trying to shut the shit down. So I love that. And every generation needs those people, those leaders who are not asking for your vote, but that are standing next to you, putting their arm around you, saying, yes, we need to make a change, not vote for me because I'll make a change.
Right,
That's
right.
Those
give me more power and money, and I promise I'll do the right thing.
Bingo.
Yeah, no, I love seeing the kids. It reminds me so much. I was into, Earth Crisis and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I still am, but like that was kind of my scene. And so I would go, protest for stores and all that kind of stuff. And I love seeing, kids that are like 19 years old doing that same kind of stuff now. I don't agree with everything they say or do, but like you said, I just think it's cool to see people out there trying to make the world a better place and do something that they like. They're doing something that they believe is right. They're trying to make the world a better place. And, I support that, whether I agree with everything they're saying or doing or not.
Yep.
It's just the spirit of it is what I like. One thing I want. What's that?
Fight for change.
Exactly. One other song we were listening to earlier, which I wanted to ask you about, an older song that people bring up to me a lot, is Slam from the Judgment Night soundtrack. I didn't really, I remembered that when it came out and I liked it, but that made more of an impression on people than I remembered. Like, people bring that up to me all the time now.
So Slam is a really awesome point in our career. We were on tour with Sick of It All, and I got a call, and I don't know how it happened, but the guys in Onyx reached out to me and asked me to do a remix of their song. And that was my beginning of my career as a producer and working in the studio. And so I did this remix, and it came out great. I had sampled Danny from Biohazard drums, and I played all these heavy guitar riffs and erased all their stuff. And then that became a friendship. That song was really big. They called it Bionics. And it came out great. That friendship, it's funny because Fred Rowe just reached out to me yesterday. And I have something I'm brewing with those guys. And from that era that I'll talk about when it's done. I never talk about things I'm going to do. I always tell you about what I did. But
sure.
That aside, it was a great time. We ended up, that friendship grew into another song that we did for the movie Judgment Night. We did the title track, which is a banging fucking track that you all should check out. But it was a great.
That's what I meant. I meant Judgment Night, not Slam, but Slam also.
We did, both tracks from Biohazard songs with them. Through that we also were tight with the Cypress Hill camp. Send Dog, I have Power Flow with. Sorry, my son is. He wants to leave a message. Go ahead.
All right.
Thanks. So, dude, I have a little clone. He's running around terrorizing the neighborhood on his bike.
Nice.
With an air horn. So that we're also close with Cypress Hill. We did a bunch of tracks with Send Dog, and that grew into my relationship with Send to form Power Flow with Christian from Fuel Factory. But the thing about Biohazard, we grew up, and not just Biohazard, but a big influence was everybody from Beastie Boys to Sugar Hill Gang and Public Enemy and Run DMC and Iron Maiden, Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags, even Earth Crisis you mentioned. Love them. We shared a big common interest in, to me, I would say it's a conspiracy theory, but this activist named, oh Jesus, I'm drawing a blank. Williams. He wrote a book called, Bill Cooper wrote a book called Behold the Pale Horse. He was a military dude. Guys, do yourself a favor, everybody listening. Google William Cooper. If you could pick up one of his writings called Behold the Pale Horse, it's eye-opening.
I remember the book. I never read it.
Yeah, I know Carl was a big fan of him, but they eventually got him. The Patriot Act came out after September 11th and it enabled them to go onto his property and eventually successfully kill him. And they got him. So usually anybody who sticks their head above the crowd, people are going to throw rocks at it. And when you're subversive and you're writing about, maybe I'm getting too crazy here. Here's a funny story.
Go for it. Just be crazy.
Yeah, Finn, cut me off when you're like, I gotta get back to what my people really want to see.
No, I'm good.
There was a funny time in my life. My brother was riding in New York with my pop, going down the street, and this kid on a skateboard ollies over the curb, zips across the street. My pop swerves out of the way and starts cursing. What the fuck? Look at this kid. He's got a green mohawk and a leather jacket with American flag torn up. Well, he just like insulted this kid on a skateboard. And my brother turns to him and says, "Pop, that was Billy." My pop was like, "What the fuck what's wrong with him?" And I had left home and living on my own, squatting with friends. And I was just disenfranchised punk rock kid who had all the answers to the world and the problems. And my pop reached out to me soon after and took me out to lunch. It was a free lunch. And I was like, "Cool, Pop. I get to go to some nice restaurant, fill my belly with good food." And so he said to me, "What do you want to do with your life?" The classic cliche that a parent says to a young teen who's, hates the world and is holding his middle fingers up to fuck the world. And I was like, "I don't know, Pop. I hate it all. I think the system is full of shit. I don't want to be part of the machine. I didn't say it, but I was raging against the machine."
Right.
And my pop was like, no one's ever going to listen to you. You got all these beliefs, and whether I agree with you or not, I respect your hustle and your angle and your passion. And he's like, "You'll never get anywhere. You're never going to make a change. You're an outsider. You have to figure out a way to fight the system from within." And I'm like, "Fuck that. I'm not going to be an accountant, some business dude wearing a 3-piece suit, hating my life, trying to change it from within. No way." And he said, "Try it." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, Pop, thanks for the free lunch." Went on my way. 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, I'm on Warner Brothers Records with Biohazard. And we're reaching a lot of people from a giant fucking soapbox. We caught a lot of flack because we went from independent labels to a major label, but our message never changed. And I kept singing and screaming about things that were just equally as important as they were on the first record, but with a giant megaphone, and more people heard what we were saying. And I realized, wow, Pop, you were right. I still got a fucking shaved head. I still have the same beliefs, but I'm not the outsider. I weaseled my way into the system through the cracks, but with the same message. Anyways, maybe it's a little bit boring to some people.
No, it's not boring. I think it's important to hear because, there's a lot of people that are, having that same conversation with themselves. They have a message they want to get out and they want to, change the world in some way or another. And, not to say that everyone should take that route. I respect people who kind of want to do things their own way and say, fuck the system. That's cool too. But at the same time, like maybe if you play ball, you might actually get a little bit further. And, you guys are a great example of that. Like you can think what you want about MTV, but how many people did you reach with MTV? Like tens or hundreds of millions.
Beavis and Butthead helped us reach a lot of people that would have never heard of Biohazard.
Right.
We didn't change the message. We're still singing about the same things we wanted. It's just suddenly they just for some reason gravitated to us, which I can relate to. But even after all these years, if it doesn't suck or it's amazing, it's not worthy. You know what I mean? That's it.
Right. Yeah. One or the other.
This has got fucking amazing or this fucking sucks. That's it. Everything in between is mediocre.
Yeah. Period. Yeah. Well, I did want to ask you a little bit about that, kind of those early days. I'm curious, what was your relationship with the hardcore scene, say, before Urban Discipline? Because I remember, like I said earlier, people said Biohazard was too metal, kind of like Life of Agony. It seemed like there was sort of that scene of, and Carnivore and Typo Negative, of these like kind of half metal, half hardcore bands that all played like the Moors. What was your relationship with hardcore back then?
So I was the hardcore kid that went to CBGBs and Biohazard. I was a guy, even though they all liked hardcore, but I was like only into hardcore and punk. That's it. And the guys kind of, I known about Sabbath and Slayer, but I didn't like it. For some reason, if it wasn't hardcore, I shut it out. The guys in Biohazard actually turned me on to a lot more metal. So when we came up, hardcore, I was like the first punk rock band I played in. I told the guys, listen, they didn't want to do it anymore. The band was breaking up. I said, we're going to play CBGBs one day. They're like, nah, we're not. I'm going to stay focused on school. I'm like, this fuck school. Come on, dude. Let's play CBGBs. That's awesome. So when Biohazard was kind of an outcast. When we played with metal bands, we were too hardcore. When we played with hardcore bands, we were too metal. So we didn't fit in anywhere. And what we ended up doing was creating, like I said before, I called it, and I didn't mean this in a disrespectful way because I got Irish blood and there's redheads in my family. But I said we were kind of like the redhead stepchild where nobody we didn't fit in anywhere because we also there was hip hop influence and there was a little bit of hardcore, a little bit of metal. But when the New York hardcore scene didn't open up, welcome us with open arms, it bothered me. It hurt me because the bands that I loved to go see at CBGBs on Sunday matinees, that's who I wanted to fit in with. But I think sticking to our guns and doing our own thing made us more unique and made us more attractive to people who liked more than just metal or more than just hardcore or more than just hip hop. They're like, I like Beastie Boys too and AF, but I like fucking Suicidal Tendencies. Right. We those people gravitated to us, and it was almost like it was cool to like a little bit of everything. It kind of sucked because out of that coolness came the baggy pants, big over extra large t-shirts, but it was a trend for a little bit. But that open-mindedness at that era changed a lot, especially in the New York scene, and it kind of spread to the world and changed and opened a lot of doors for a lot of people and a lot of bands. So I'm proud of.
Another thing that I became aware of later was how big you guys were in Europe. I remember, from my understanding is you guys were almost like a mainstream radio band in Germany. Is that right?
I don't know about mainstream. I know that it was a different thing. We always sell, and most bands sell their most records in the US, but geographically speaking, it's a bigger population by far, and it's spread out over a much, huge mass of land. Whereas Europe, smaller population crammed into a smaller area. You can go on tour in Europe in 2 weeks. You can hit all the major cities.
It's like touring the East Coast of America.
Yeah, or New England. Yeah. Whereas in the States, it takes you 2 months to hit most, not all, but a majority of the major cities. That's 2 months versus 2 weeks. So when you put that concentration, we always seem to play in front of way more people there. But playing in front of, barring cities like Miami, New York, LA, Chicago, Detroit, the major cities, you play in front of Des Moines, Iowa, unless you're Slipknot, or, you have to cross over a huge threshold of record sales to reach all those people. And most of the records you sell in the States, most of the people, when you really hit the big leagues of what the labels call your major sales, it's all in middle America. But the other thing too, it's a big difference. Like some of the biggest New York bands in the underground punk and hardcore scene, you're playing in front of 1,500 kids at Lemoore or the Ritz or whatever. But then when you're this equal size, but you're from California, you're playing in front of 5,000 kids. Bands like Pennywise or Bad Religion. So it's just geographically different in America than it is in Europe. So to say that we were a radio band, I think it was more so because of the geographic difference.
Got it. Well, it seems like Europe back then, I mean, I guess still, but they really took to Dog Eat Dog and Madball, and they really liked the kind of New York hardcore adjacent kind of bands, almost more than America did. All the Dynamo shit.
I think a lot had to do with it's the brand of New York was always big, especially when it hit Japan. Forget about it. It was it's massive. There's a certain allure, and it's not like that anymore. I think people have individual identity and pride, and whether you're from, I don't know, Tempe, Arizona, or East LA.
Right.
But city, I think representing your turf, whether it was New York or LA, those were the turfs. Detroit, maybe. That was the cities that really represented hard. And we never, the thing about Biohazard, it was funny. The media, and it was more so Europe, that was one of our songs, Biohazard, Biohazard from Brooklyn, New York, in your face. It was the end of a tag of a song for Wrong Side of the Tracks. And it just stuck. Maybe we put it on one t-shirt. Suddenly every press release from every fucking label was it was Biohazard in Brooklyn couldn't be, it wasn't a sentence that didn't have the two words together.
Right.
And it was this the media just, it's marketing, and it wasn't an intentional thing. It just happened.
Right. Yeah, well, the Europeans, especially back then, were very fascinated by that. So, do you carry a gun everywhere? Like, yeah, no, not so much.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I'll let you go. But I appreciate your time very much. Excited to see the rollout of the new record. I really sincerely enjoy it, and thank you for doing this.
Dude, I appreciate your time and support, man. Keep it up, bro. You have it's super entertaining what you're doing. It's awesome.
Awesome. Take care. Talk to you later.